Is this 1981 Renault R5 Turbo 1 on Bring a Trailer just an old French ripoff of the Volkswagen GTI Hot-Hatch? Or is it really a supercar hiding in a Le Car outfit? Also, how much is it worth? Let's find out right now. Bit Nerds is your daily YouTube car game show, where we predict the online auction results of the most interesting cars on Bring a Trailer, Cars and Bids, Haggerty Marketplace, and more. It's just like the Price is Right game show. Play along and see if you can beat the nerds. Are you ready for this one? This is definitely an interesting car if there ever were one. This is a 1981 Renault R5 Turbo 1. Just gaze at this car for a moment. I mean, who cares what I'm saying? Turn the sound off for a second. I mean, you should if I'm talking anyway. But this car is like, oh my God, this could be one of the most interesting cars, not just that's up for auction right now, but of all time. These little things, you look at this car and you think, all right, this is a hot hatch, right? It's got a turbocharged little 1400cc inline engine. It's got a 5-speed manual transmission. You're thinking, okay, it's from 81. This thing is it's just another hopped up little GTI Volkswagen wannabe like so many cars. But no, this is a hatchback mid-engine. Guys, the motor's behind you in this car. That is, to me, just absolutely crazy. It's rear-wheel drive. This car looks so good if you're into this era of car. This is definitely Radwood royalty. One of the interesting things about this car isn't just all the cool specs and how great the condition about this car is. What's really interesting is, one, that this car is up for no reserve on BaT. So whatever the bidding gets up to, this car is sold, right? Which seems crazy to me in January for any car, really, because I mean it's anyone's guess. They only made like 1,800 of these. This is a numbered car. I can't remember what number it is. I think it's like number 200 or something like that. It's definitely in the listing. This is being sold by a dealer that tried to sell this car previously on BaT just back in November. And the car failed to sell back then. And I think it got bid up to like 140 grand. These things are just absolutely goofy looking, absolutely cool. Ian, what's your opinion of the 1981 Renault R5 Turbo 1?
It's worth all of the money.
All of the money.
All of the money.
That's a lot of money.
It's all, but
all
it's worth all of the money. It's got rally pedigree. It's a hatchback with a mid-engine rear drive layout. It's the coolest car maybe ever made.
Wow.
I'm obsessed with these. They're so cool. But I think probably it deserves to get at least $200,000.
Okay, well, we're not at bids yet.
Sorry.
But that's okay. So we've got a number from Ian. Okay, Michael and Neil, what do you think of the R5 Turbos?
I think if I were just going to be like, cool, I'm going to collect certain cars, that I would just collect all the Group 4 rally cars. They're all so rad. I love this thing. It's one of the coolest. I mean, just the steering wheel is crazily
the
awesome.
2-spoke thing, yeah.
Oh, it's just so cool and 80s and but it's got so much cool, like if you dig in and look at the engine and stuff, and it's got so much utility to it. It's such a race car, which is so cool. The engineering is awesome. I love it. I think it's just a fierce, amazing car. And like you said, it would be Radwood royalty. Yeah, I'm all in. I love the color scheme. Everything about it is just so cool and so unapologetic. And everything has a purpose. And weirdly, it's like, even though it's a race car, they've done a very nice job making it very streetable. Like, it looks pretty nice on the in and out. So I love it. I think it's amazing.
Mental, what do you think?
Add me to the ever-growing chimes of this thing is amazing. Now, and I love that Michael said it's streetable. And that's a relative concept because there is no nannies on this car. It is all the power. The turbo is not actually, but in philosophy, it's analog because it's either off or it's all on, and it loves to do that. like all those old turbos, mid-corner in a mid-engined rear-wheel drive car. So you are and it's got the wheelbase of a desk. It is looking to swap ends on you like that. And I love cars that make you pay attention. And all this great pedigree and everything everyone is saying is true. It has also got Bond, because on the Sean Connery, when he came back and did Never Say Never Again, the villain drove one of these.
It's always a good sign if the bad guy drove a car. Like if a bad guy drives a car and then you buy that car, you're doing all right. That's why you never buy a minivan, because the bad guy's never going to drive a Plymouth, whatever their minivan is, a Caravan or whatever. Pacifica, thanks. Well, exactly.
This thing probably is pretty dangerous to drive, like Mental was saying, but it's probably among the more adorable ways to die.
It's like he's burning to death. Oh, that's so cute. If only that 59 fire truck could get here a little bit more quickly to put out the fire. Yeah, boy, looking at, I was trying to figure out why this thing didn't sell last time around at 140. That's kind of where I thought these were worth, but apparently they're worth a lot more. And one thing you notice looking at the comments on these auctions for this car, for both the old one and the current one, is that the fan base for this car is like knows every last little thing about them. I mean, they know every nut and bolt and screw and everything like that. And it may be a small fan base, but boy, these people are into it. Apparently these things are the nicest steel top ones they're saying are worth like over 200 grand. I don't know a whole lot about the value of one of these other than just the quick, cursory looking at both these two auctions. So I'm going to start the bidding and just say, I think that it makes sense that they tried again, but I think they should have waited a little longer. I think this car should have waited till, at least March, to get another, bite at the apple. It's at 92 grand right now with less than a day to go. This thing's going to be sold to someone tomorrow. Will it get more than the $140,000 that it was bid up to in November, or less? I'm going to say less. I think that at the second shot, I don't think it makes the money. I think this thing is going to struggle to get to 130, and I'm going to send it off to Ian. What do you think?
I think it'll go beyond that. I don't know. It deserves to, so I'm willing it higher than that.
You're putting the good vibes out there. I agree. I want it to make the money. Yeah. I just think that winter is just a bad time for something that's just this crazy. My partner Michael Deeb says $159. Before we get to O'Neill's bid, Mental, what do you think?
I also, sorry, I'm pushing the wrong buttons here. So it is a fantastic car. Someone walked into a Renault dealership on purpose with supercar money in the 80s and said, I want one of these. Because when was the last time you gazed upon one of these in this country? I'm going to say it is going to go for $180,000.
180. Michael O'Neill, what's your bid?
It's not going to sell on Bring a Trailer. I'm going to tell you, that's part of my bid. I think it's
hold on. Before you get to your bid, though, this is a no reserve auction, which means it's going to sell on Bring a Trailer. This is unless they fink on the unless they say they take the bid and just don't sell it, which is always a possibility.
Okay.
Yeah. What do you think it's going to get bid to then? And not.
So what I read is that the Gen 1 this is an alloy-bodied car versus the steel-bodied car, which makes it way rarer and more valuable than the ones that have already sold. Man, if people know what they're doing, it'll be 180 if it sells, but with no reserve, yeah. I'm going to say it's 150.
150. Okay. So Ian's at 200.
Yeah.
And Michael O'Neill's at 150. Mental, you were at, what was that?
I'm going to will it to 180. I'm willing to be wrong because I want it to sell for 180.
Okay. And let's hear. So what the nerd herd, Gerd, who has gotten like 2 Yahtzees in the last month and a half or something like that. He's at 161.5.
Oh yeah. We've got Sergeant Tom has got 175. Family Guy 5150 says close to 200K. That's not the rules. You got to pick a number on that one. Randy B's at 157. Chris Carbine at 1689. Buddha, just to be Buddha, went 159,001 because he wanted to be Price is Right all over Michael Deeb.
And it is a Turbo 1, so I see where he's going with that.
yeah.
All right,
And,
nice work, Buddha.
But he also said just over Deeb. And V12 smooths at 171.
171. All right, so we got quite the big spread on this. This will be interesting to find out.
Family Guy did throw something in there. Family Guy 5150 said, real bidders do not bother on a no reserve auction until the last minute. So this will be a fun one to watch close.
That's true. There's going to be a lot of attempted sniping at the very end.
And Bring a Trailer will keep going as long as there's bidding, right?
Sure. Yep. Yeah, it always adds 2 minutes. So, and all the auction sites are that way other than eBay these days when it comes to the enthusiast car auction sites anyway. So yeah, this is going to be a pretty interesting one to watch given that there's no reserve. I'm expecting some serious drama because if you're the seller, like how much anxiety does the seller have right now, O'Neill?
The seller wants 200 plus. Like you can tell that by the comments.
Yeah.
He said if this was an auction in Europe, this would go for 200 plus all day long. So I think that they're probably shitting bricks is what they're doing right now.
I mean, why did
they're not excited?
Why didn't they call my partner Michael Deeb, who works for Haggerty, and sell this thing at Amelia Island? That's where you should have taken, because that's coming up in a few weeks, right?
You know, you should just buy it and have it shipped directly to Amelia Island, and then it'd be ready to go, and you could flip it real quick. You'd be the only person in history that ever flipped a Renault R5 Turbo.
You could park it next to your 935 Moby Dick
That car's garbage
in your douchebag warehouse while you gotta flip that car. All right. What do you guys think? Do you think whoever buys it, do you think that's why they're going to buy it, to flip it, or do you think they'll actually drive it? Does anybody drive this car, or is this thing just going to be hermetically sealed in a museum somewhere?
I mean, I hope it's driven because it's a race car that you can buy, right? That's the whole point of these things, is they were homologation specials. So you could actually drive an 80s era race car on the road. What was the mileage on this?
That
49,104.
Yeah.
Well, that's kilometers, so you got to do the math on it.
I refuse.
Fair enough.
But yeah, sure, drive it. Why not?
O'Neill, you think the next buyer will drive it, or do you think it's going to another auction or just sitting somewhere in a warehouse next to the 935?
I think if the person buys it in the States, that it's mostly ignored, and if they buy it in Europe, it's the hit of whatever car show it's in.
Yeah,
I think that's the big difference. I don't know if it's bought here. Yeah, it'll be at Radwood and cool stuff like that. I think the people know what it is.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
In SoCal, people
they know
what
whoever
it is.
buys this. It's such a unique car. They have to know what it's all about. And if it sells for what we think, if it sells for 150, they're way ahead on it. They could go and flip it in Europe and make 60 grand tomorrow. Yeah. So I think they would, I don't know, hang on to it, drive it a little bit, do the thing that rich guys do with cars.
Yeah. So the only time I've ever actually seen one of these was at the Phoenix Club 356 Registries swap meet back in 2019 for the Toy and Lit Show weekend. And the Toy and Lit Show weekend is coming up.
There.
Yeah, you remember seeing that one? I think it was blue or something like
That's
that.
when I met Mike Brewer. That was when me and Mike became buds.
There you go. All the greatest people are at the old Phoenix Club. It's too bad they don't do it there anymore. Are you going to be going to the Toy and Lit Show weekend coming up on the 24th? Yeah, all right.
Sure, that's the Super Bowl for us here in the LA area.
I always call it the beginning of official Porsche season in Southern California. It's like when everything starts.
It's a week.
Yeah.
Which it's a good time, because you guys are buddies now, when you interviewed him, to mention that it is the start, because in April we've got Air and Water.
Yep.
Got my tickets. Thank you for the pimp on that this morning, by the way. So you can catch most of the bid nerds at the Air and Water show in April. So yeah.
Most of us will be at the Toy and Lit and wherever they. Have you been to the new 356 swap meet? They do it at, what is it, the Boys Republic or whatever? I haven't been to that one yet. How is it?
Yeah, it's cool. It's bigger, way bigger, and the layout's better than Phoenix Club.
That's saying something. All right.
Yeah, it's cool. It was the Steve McQueen spot that Boys Republic place was the Steve McQueen joint, but. Yeah, man, you got to go there and you got to have your list, and you have your money, and you go in there and buy your parts, and then you spend the rest of the day, eating $14 hamburgers or whatever.
Jibber jab and drink a beer. Yeah. Well, we'll definitely have to hang out there. What do you guys think this little turbo Renault will bring? Let us know in the comments below. Hey guys, I gotta tell you about our friends Godden Porsche of Las Vegas and Godden Classic. If you're looking for a new Porsche or a classic, you gotta call our friend Steve at Godden. Save yourself the hassle of screwing around with all the auctions like we always talk about, and just talk to Steve. He'll find you the classic Porsche you're looking for. Godden Porsche of Las Vegas. Hey guys, you're probably looking at your watch and wondering if Bid Nerds will ever end. So you better talk to our friends at Our Smiths to make sure your Rolex, Tag Heuer, AP, or any fine timepiece is in tip-top shape. Our Smiths, fine Swiss repair. Now, Michael Deeb, you weren't here, but you were home sick.
I was ghosting, but I was following along, and you guys did a really good job introducing the car. I'm particularly proud of Michael O'Neill because he did mention and hammer home something that I was burning for you guys to say, which is that this particular 1981 Renault R5 Turbo that was on Bring a Trailer was in fact a Turbo 1, meaning this is one of the early series cars, and these cars were alloy body. So they were several hundred pounds lighter than an already ridiculously light car. These motors are not particularly big. They're only 1,400 cc's, but with the turbo and the fact that these early aluminum body cars are probably less than 2,000 pounds, that 140 to 150, and then they had upgrades in Europe. I can't remember what it was called, but there was like a rally package upgrade that brought horsepower to 160 horsepower. These things back in the day were fast and got out of their own way. I mean, really neat cars. The construction of these cars is like a supercar that was left in the dryer too long. Independent suspension, limited slip differential, 5-speed manual transmission, disc brakes all around, mid-engine configuration. On paper, you would think this car was like a legitimate $1 million supercar, but instead, this was a homologation special for Renault to sell the Le Car and get this car, into the collective consciousness by winning races in the World Rally Championship in the early '80s, when that was, the way NASCAR operated here. The whole win on Sunday and sell on Monday. Every manufacturer in Europe was trying to do the same thing, but they used the World Rally Championship as their playground. So this particular car looked pretty nice. It's worth mentioning that this car had run in November of last year, where it was bid to $140,000 and failed to sell there on just 13 bids. So the car came back to Bring a Trailer now. Just what are we calling this, JP? 3 months later, less than 3 months later. And this time it was running at no reserve. So with that in mind, although I didn't declare my bid, I wrote down in the sheets $159,000. JP came in way under me at 130, stating that he didn't think so quickly after it had run on the previous BAT listing that it would make the mark that it had hit previously at 140. So he came in at 130, much lower, much under that. Ian, impressed with the car and claiming that he really didn't know much about these, went $200,000 all in. Michael O'Neill was at $150,000. And then ultimately, Mental came in between O'Neill and Ian at $180,000. Again, this car ran at no reserve. Mental, do we have the bids from the herd up yet?
Right there. We had Randy at 157,
thank
Anthony
you,
at
Randy.
152.5, Chris was 168.9, Michael 159, Fam Guy 200K, Sergeant Tom's 175, Jim 167.546, Chris 147.75, Tom A 162.50, Gerd 161.50, and V12 at 171.
Look at that, JP. The lowest bid there is 152. And you got bids all the way up to 200 grand at the herd. So everybody really liked that car. And I actually think those numbers make a lot of sense if this car didn't just run in November. In other words, if it was running no reserve here for the first time, I think those numbers would have been in play. But JP, you said something really interesting, which was you didn't think it would return to its old mark. It did, but only just. So after 44 bids, the hammer fell and it sold for $143,500. technically, John, I think you had the right strategy, but Michael O'Neill had the closest bid, so he's the one that won that one. But your train of thought was right on point. What do you think of that result? Remember now, it was 140 2 months ago. It went to 143.5 and sold. How do you read the tea leaves on that? What do you think?
Yeah, it's interesting how, we've seen this a number of times lately where there's been a second bite at the apple, and the second bite seems to have done better almost every single time. Like we saw it with Shoddy's car, where his barely got to 90 the first time around, and the next time around it got to $1.60. Yeah, I mean, it was like, whoa. This time around, yeah, okay, they made another $3,000, but you gotta, in the middle of winter, I don't know why they bothered to come back so soon at that point. Unless they really needed the money. Now, this car, I believe, was being sold by a dealership, so dealers don't like to have cars sitting there that ties up their money and keeps them from being able to, it's an opportunity cost the longer money is tied up on a single car. So, okay, great. They made a couple of $1,000s more here the second time around. But honestly, the fact that it did better in January, when, let's face it, there is a dip. There's always a January dip. Everyone's talking about the end of the world right now with car prices, but enthusiast car prices really aren't dropping all that much. Yes, regular cars, if you're trying to sell a CRV or a Hyundai Telluride or something like that at a dealership, it's always going to be crappy in January. People have just been back to work for a couple of weeks. They're making up for all the money that they spent in the holidays. They're not going to be in the money till probably next month. People are going to start getting their, a lot of people in the used car market, they wind up getting their IRS, refund check. And then they'll use that as a down payment on a car. But this isn't the type of car that falls into that category. This is a car that falls into the category of someone that wants something special like this, but isn't really thinking about it till the weather's getting better. There's half the country is in a deep freeze right now, or at least was for most of last week when this car closed. And who the hell's thinking about buying a $200,000, super rare weirdo rally car? If this were at Amelia Island in just a month from now, Michael?
Yeah.
When, in Florida, you go down there and you've got your shorts on, you're from Connecticut or something like that, and you're like, oh my gosh, it's nice down here. You start thinking that spring is right around the corner. Then you go back to the cold part of the country where you're from. You're like, oh crap, it's not. But, at least people start thinking about spring. It's nowhere even close to spring. Winter just started. It's not even Super Bowl yet. I think it was, I think if the dealer could have hung on to this car and paid the VIG for another, month or two, they would have come out. I think they left tens of thousands of dollars on the table. If they would have tried to sell this thing in March, this thing definitely would have been up there, $150, $160, maybe even closer to $200. What do you think, Mental?
Oof, tough call. And I can't argue with your logic. I was hoping that this car was so unique and rare that it operated outside of those normal confines, but apparently no. And I'm hoping whoever bought it isn't planning on just like throwing it up a third time. I hope they're actually going to plan on enjoying it a little bit.
Yeah, what do you guys think of the results of this incredibly rare Renault Le Car? This is not just an average Le Car. This is quite the special car. Do you guys think that the seller should have waited till after the winter? Should they waited till spring and made the real money, or were they a smart dealer doing the prudent thing, getting that cash flow back into their system so they can maybe buy 2, 3, 4 more cars and make that extra $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 that they left on the table sooner and get that capital back to work? Let us know in the comments below. The Nerd Herd always seems to know. The Nerd Herd is hanging out. We got a bunch of you hanging out tonight. Of course, the usual suspects. We got Anthony from Our Smiths. We've got Randy. Those guys are the Idahoans. The Idahoans.
Potato
Idaho
Mafia.
Nerd. The
Is that the right way to say that?
They're going to have to
Idahoans?
tell
Is
us.
that the right way?
Idaho something or another. You guys are going to have to do it.
I live in Marin, and when you're from here, you're a Maronite.
It's getting a little, I don't know, it's getting a little spicy in the comment section. They're talking about like killing each other and
No. They were
like
talking
that.
about that was they said the Renault was a red resale coffin, is what Chris Carbine.
Very nice.
And our man Anthony said, "You're assuming it will run long enough to kill you."
Right. Yeah. I definitely think that this was an opportunity to buy the dip. I think someone could have swooped up if they had the money there. This is definitely something that 2, 3, 4 months, they're definitely going to get a great return on this car.
Spud Syndicate. I'm sorry, that's what they like to be
Syndicate,
called up
very
there.
nice. Love the Spud Syndicate.
Oh, man.
Now, that doesn't mean we don't love the rest of the nerd herd. The rest of the nerd herd's hanging out too. You guys rocking it. Of course, Chris Carbine down in Louisiana, New Orleans. Lee Patet, local boy, hanging out. David Van. Who else is Ryan? And Buddha's hanging out. Right on, Buddha. What's up, man?
We have
Sullivan.
We have a potato gumbo with sliced kiwi on it. I like that.
And we've got a new listener right here, George Condor.
What's up, Condor? Thanks for joining the nerd herd, buddy.
Yeah.
All right.
Dr. John
George.
504, and man, we're all having a good time tonight. All right.
George is going to need an antacid after trying to digest this show. Poor guy.
Hey guys, thanks for watching this clip of the Bid Nerds podcast. Play along with us live every Sunday and Wednesday night at 6:30 p.m. on YouTube. And see if your bids stack up to the rest of the nerd herd in the chat live. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you on the next episode.